Okay, we're going to solve word problems using systems of equations. We know elimination method, we know substitution method, we know how to graph. Today we're going to stick with mostly algebraic methods of elimination and substitution. So, here's our word problem. Kristen spent $131 on shirts. Fancy shirts cost $28, plain shirts cost $15. If she bought a total of 7 shirts, then how many of each kind did she buy? Okay, so she went shopping and she wants to know how many of what she bought. So she spent a total of $131 on shirts. Fancy shirts are $28, plain shirts are $15, and she bought a total of 7 shirts. So these are a series of questions that you need to think through as you do one of these word problems. Like eventually you're not going to have these questions, but for you to just think through and process about how you're doing these word problems is a great way to think through them. So first, how much are the fancy shirts? Well, fancy shirts were $28, right? And then the plain shirts, well, because we had 2 types of shirts, so the plain shirts were $15. And then the total cost would be $131. So the next question is going to be, is going to ask us to write an equation about how much the shirts cost. So, do we know how many fancy shirts she bought? Well, no, but we knew they were $28. So if we have 28, and we use F for fancy, plus, let's see, 15P for plain, so $28, $15, set equal to 131. Okay, that's one equation. Then it asks, how many shirts did she buy? Well, going back here, she bought a total of 7 shirts. So, she bought 7. So, if you had fancy shirts plus plain shirts, the total of them would be 7. You now have 2 equations. You have a system of equations. 1 equation, 2 equations. Now, you can solve this. So, if you have 28F plus 15P equals 131, and then you have F plus P equals 7, all we've got to do is multiply. So when we multiply, we're going to need to multiply by something that's negative. And I would choose to multiply on the bottom simply because it's going to be just easier to multiply by. So if we multiply on the bottom, I would multiply by a negative 15. Okay, so that means we're going to distribute to all 3 of these terms. So our new problem is 28F plus 15P equals 131 minus 15F minus 15P, which equals negative 105. Alright, and now we just have addition, subtraction to take care of. So, 28 minus 15F will give us 13F. The 15P's, both of them cancel, and that leaves us with 26. Well, when you divide by 13 on both sides, F equals 2. So you had 2 fancy shirts. Great. But now we have to know how many plain shirts we have. Well, if we use this original equation right here, F plus P equals 7, we substitute for F, so 2 plus P equals 7. Well, if you solve the equation, you find that the number of plain shirts you had was 5. So, in all, we can conclude that Kristen bought 2 fancy shirts, and and 5 plain shirts. Now, a lot of students ask, well, who would you determine as X and Y here? It kind of depends on you. If you were graphing, if they gave you a graph that was labeled, if they told you who were X and Y, then you would have some guidance. But really and truly, as long as you label things correctly and you're consistent as to what you're using for X and what you're using for Y, then it really doesn't matter who you decide is X and who you decide is Y. Because neither of these are necessarily independent or dependent of the other. It just depends on how you're looking at it. So, but go through these series of questions, and they're adaptable to any problem, and think about them as you solve other word problems like these.